Hello and welcome to our technology webinar for today. Today is the Skype for Global Learning webinar. That's what we used to call it, but we're going to expand it a little bit and call it the Video Conferencing in Education webinar. I am Mark Oakton, a coordinator with the Curriculum and Professional Development Division. You can see my contact information there. In order to avoid the duplication of effort, we have taken portions of this webinar from a previously recorded webinar. In order to get credit in Pathor for attending this webinar, there are a couple of things that you must do. First, you have to view the entire webinar. Now, because I do have the webinar, if you're viewing it in the Google Classroom, playing back through Edpuzzle, you are unable to fast forward through it, which helps us to make sure that you viewed the entire webinar. Second, you must answer the questions that pop up throughout the presentation. And finally, please make sure that you complete the exit survey, which will become available at the conclusion of the webinar. Attendance will be recorded in Pathor in the near future. Please email me if you have any questions about this. This presentation is part of the Clark County School District's Blend Ed Digital Learning Initiative, which is a collaborative effort between various branches within the Curriculum and Professional Development Division. Together, we are working across the district to try to get online and blended learning into more and more of our classrooms. When we're talking about the district's Blend Ed initiative, what we mean, we're looking at combining the best elements of face-to-face instruction with the best elements of online and digital learning. Instead of talking about blended education in the Clark County School District, we talk about Blend Ed. In Blend Ed, we are looking at three key elements: the digital curriculum, the guided instruction, and the authentic assessment, or what we call the CIA of digital learning. If you think about it, all classrooms are designed on these three elements: curriculum, instruction, and assessment. You can't do any of them without the other, and they should have an equal balance in every classroom. However, this does look a little bit different in the Blend Ed classroom. Remember that Blend Ed is a mixture of face-to-face instruction and digital content. Imagine, if you will, a triple Venn diagram. Each and every day, we are somewhere within that Venn diagram. Some days we're more involved with content, and other days we're more involved with instruction. The spot we're aiming for is where the curriculum, instruction, and assessment converge. As I mentioned, portions of this webinar were recorded previously. I want to give credit to Mark Thomas, who, when he recorded this last year, he was teaching 4th grade at Bruner Elementary School, and who is now at the Marzano Academy at Hurd Elementary School as their humanities teacher. He is the most knowledgeable person that I know in using Skype in education. So rather than having me talk to you, I'm going to have him talk to you and share some of his experiences in using Skype, because he has so much more insight and such better insight than I do that I want to put you in his very, very capable hands. So even though this isn't live for you, we're going to have some information here presented by our amazing Mark Thomas.
All right, I guess I'm the other half of the Mark and Mark show, aren't I? All right, what is Skype? Skype is a video conferencing software that allows you to communicate with anybody, anywhere else in the world, as long as you both have an internet connection. During this presentation, I'm going to talk a lot specifically about Skype and that software, but also know that Google Hangouts can be used. It's also video conferencing software and can be used in the exact same ways. We're just focusing mostly on Skype, but you can use both. Why would you want to use Skype in the classroom? Well, it's a free product. It doesn't cost you anything, as well as Google Hangouts. Everybody in the district has a Google account, and along with that comes access to Google Hangouts. You can easily get a Skype account for free. It's an awesome way for students to practice their communication skills as they interact with other classrooms, other experts, other adults. In presentations, they can ask questions, they can use their voice, and they can develop those communication skills. Using Skype, it gives you access to the whole world, really. You can communicate with experts in a certain field that you study or that your class works on. You can communicate with authors and illustrators. You can communicate with scientists. I've talked with classes in New Zealand, in Hawaii, and Canada, places where my class would never, ever be able to go. unless I used something like Skype. We have some fabulous experiences that way. It also increases their global awareness, makes them realize that there is actually a world out there outside of Las Vegas. Introduces concepts like north, south, east, west, latitude, longitude, the hemispheres, all sorts of, helps them to realize that there are issues and cultures, other places in the world, and helps to bring in that awareness of we live in a great, big, beautiful place. So those are awesome, fabulous reasons why you would want to do something like using Skype or Google Hangouts. What kind of equipment will you need? Well, first of all, you're going to have a computer with internet access. That can be a desktop, a laptop, an iPad, any kind of mobile device, as long as you have access to the internet. Skype and Google Hangouts are not blocked by the district, so you have full access to use them. Whatever device you use needs to have a USB webcam, or excuse me, a webcam of some kind, whether it's plugged in through USB or built in, like on a Mac or in your iPad or something like that. You'll also need a microphone, obviously, so that you can communicate. And of course, you'll need a set of classroom speakers so you can hear the conversation going back and forth. You also need, as I mentioned, a Skype account and a Google account if you're doing Google Hangouts. Marco, do you want to talk about how the teachers can get a free Skype account through their district Microsoft account?
Okay, this is where it might get a little bit confusing because you're creating an account. As I don't know if you know, but everyone in the district has a Microsoft account. It was created just like your Google account was created. And so if you go to the website is login.microsoftonline.com, it will give you the opportunity to log in using your district Microsoft account. So now you see that mine asked me to pick an account because I already have mine in there. You'll have to add your account originally. Now notice my account is simply my Active Directory at ad.ccsd.net, and yours will be the same way. It'll be your AD, the same thing you use to log into your computer at work, the same email address that you have with your NVCCSD, just those first 5 of your last name and your first and middle initials. So you'll use that, and your password is your Active Directory password, and so you can sign in using that. Now that's your Microsoft Office 365 account, and it will show you the apps that you have that are available to you. Here's the problem. Skype is not on there. You have to go and create an account with Skype separately. So when we talk about having a Microsoft account and how Microsoft has purchased Skype, yes they have, but you cannot use, and I don't know why this is the case, you cannot use your district Microsoft account for your Skype account. In fact, if you go into Skype and try to use that account, it will not work. It will tell you that you cannot use that email address. So my email address here, that is my oakdma@ad.ccsd.net, my Microsoft email, my district Microsoft email account. If I try to use that email to create my Skype account, it will not work. Okay, so you ask, what do you need to do? What you need to do is you need to first download Skype. So you can download Skype onto your computer if you have access. If you're doing it from school, obviously, as you were talking about using Skype in the classroom, you might need your site-based technician to come in and install Skype on your computer. You can ask him or her to do that, and that shouldn't be a problem. So you download Skype onto your computer. And then once the Skype program, because it is a separate program, once the Skype program has been installed on your computer, you can create a new account. So if you type in your Microsoft account, that one I just showed you right here, let me show you what happens. It'll tell me just a moment, and it'll tell me that there's not a Microsoft account associated with that email, even though we just saw that there was. Okay, so what I don't want to try to use that. What I want to do is create a new account, and I would use my Google, my NVCCSD email. So I wouldn't use my phone number. Use my Google NVCCSD email and create an account that way. Create a password, so it's not going to be tied to your Active Directory. When your Active Directory, when your Google email password changes and you change your Active Directory, it will not change your Skype email. Okay, so that's what you'll use to log in and create your Skype account. If you wanted to use another email, you could. I like to have everything with using the same password, same email, and so I would recommend using your NVCCSD account because that is the officially recognized email in the Clark County School District.
All right, thank you, Mark. So Microsoft has, on their website, has built in some tools to make it easy to find some of these mystery Skype, some of these experts, some of these lessons that you can use with Skype in your classroom. So I'm going to do a screen share right now and take you out to this website. Make a note of it, education.microsoft.com, and you can go there later after the webinar and explore on your own and find some people to hook up with. But I'm going to do a screen share. Mark, will you let me know? I can't see the text chat. Will you let me know if you can see my?
Yep, we can see it.
Window? Okay, perfect. Is it just my browser window, or do you see my whole desktop?
I see just your browser window.
Awesome. Okay, so I went to education.microsoft.com and I logged in. Actually, I'm not logged in yet with my account, but if I go to, on the left-hand side, Skype in the Classroom, this website, this education website has a lot of other tools for Microsoft users in the classroom, like Microsoft Office and some becoming Microsoft certified and all that kind of stuff. But we're going to focus on Skype in the Classroom. So I'm going to click on that link, Skype in the Classroom. And basically this is a repository of all sorts of connections that I can make with other Skype users. So you can see that I've got some virtual field trips, Skype lessons, collaborations, and mystery Skype and guest speakers, and I'll talk about some of these later, but the purpose of this site is actually to find those connections. So let's pretend that I want to find a particular Skype lesson. I can click on that, but I've also got this filter button where I can filter by age group. So I'm making sure that if I'm a high school teacher that I'm finding Skype lessons appropriate for them. If I'm teaching kindergarten, I can find lessons appropriate for them. I can also filter by subject, whether I teach history, geography, a science, reading, hooking up with authors or something like that. So I can filter all of those out. Just to give you an example of how to find things though, I'm just going to go straight to Skype lessons. And as I scroll down, I've got some featured Skype lessons and I've got some new ones, some popular ones. I can scroll through each of these and find something interesting. And for example, I see this Skype lesson is about drawing with a picture book artist. So if I click on this link, I can see that he does these Skypes. He scheduled himself at various times and dates from November until 2019. And I get a little bio about him. And I've got a button here so I can see what he actually does, see if this is something that interests me. And then I can click down here under register for this Skype lesson, and it will show me a calendar of his days and times that are available, and I can register for that time. And then it also gives me contact information for him, so I can email him and we can make any arrangements, do some pre-planning, whatever needs to be done. On the day of our Skype lesson, I would then launch Skype, log in, and search for him, find his Skype username and make that connection and run away with the lesson. So all of these searches are similar fashion. If I go to field trips, I can find that they've got field trips on coral reef research. There's a good one in UK. This was posted several years ago. It's visiting a primate rescue center. And I can see it's even got the appropriate ages. They feel that this is a lesson appropriate for kids 6 and up. So I can read a little bit about it and go register for that. So that's really what you use this website for, is to find those connections. It's also easy, and I'll show you another couple of websites later in a little bit. It's also easy to just go out and do a Google search for things like virtual field trips or Skype with an author, things like that, and you can find a lot of connections that way as well. All right, so we should be back at the presentation. All right, so different kinds of Skype adventures that you can have with your classroom. Using Skype is an excellent way to do virtual field trips. Give your students the opportunity to visit a place that they normally wouldn't be able to visit. Here's a few websites that you can go to check them out. The National World War II Museum, which is, I believe, in New Orleans, does some virtual field trips where you can Skype in and they'll show you some of the equipment and artifacts that they have there. The Boston Tea Party ship for those who do 5th grade and talk about the Revolutionary War, United States, or the older grades, I guess, that talk about that. Is it really got some really good experiences. I'm going to do a screen share and show you that website because that's kind of cool. This is a museum. I assume it's in Boston. I really honestly don't know their exact location. But, and this one costs, most of these virtual field trips are free. There are some that do charge a fee. This is one that does charge, costs $199. And they walk you out on the ship. You see a description here. They take you out on the ship. They show you some of the experience that you have on the boats. Walk down a replica of Boston Street during that time period. See a little bit of battle, what it was like on the ships, and what that whole experience was like. Again, if that's an area of study that you do, how awesome would that be to have your kids actually experiencing that? Since it's kind of hard to get a bus to drive you all the way that way for a field trip in a day. But they've got several, you can schedule different days and times for that. They've got a couple of smaller experiences that are just like a 30-minute one. And so it's just really good experience. The Teacher's Guide, this last link here, teachersguide.com/virtual tours. Has a list of a bunch of other websites that you can go to explore and find some other field trips. There's some that go out to Coral Reef. There's some that go out down into Antarctica. And of course, a variety of museums around the world will do some virtual field trips for you and let the kids see some of the exhibits that they have. So virtual field trips, awesome way of using Skype. You can also do, going back, let me step back onto that virtual field trip. I did an activity, I believe it was last year, with a kindergarten class where they had done a unit on farms and farm animals. And of course, kids living here in Las Vegas, down by the Strip, had no idea what a farm was like or what a cow was like. And so I was able to hook up with a farm bureau in Iowa, who in turn connected me with 2 farms out there in the middle of Iowa. One was a dairy farm and one was a chicken farm. And the farmers there got on their iPads and went out into the field with whatever internet connection they could get. And they walked the kindergarten classes that I was working with, 4 of them, walked them around to see what the fields were like. We walked into the barn, saw where the cows were at. We went into where the chickens saw their coops up on the shelf, where they laid their eggs and how they gathered the eggs. They would lay their eggs and they would roll down this little tube and be gathered in this barrel down at the bottom. Talked about what they fed them, talked about how they took care of them. It was just an awesome experience for these kindergartners, and then they could ask some questions about them. And they heard the cows mooing and the chickens clucking and all of that. And so it's just something that majority of those kids, they would never ever be able to experience except through this kind of a virtual field trip. So that was just awesome. All right, authors. Love bringing in authors and other experts to talk with the kids. And authors, they absolutely love talking with kids. They love sharing their books, their pictures. They love sharing their writing process that they go through with kids, getting them exciting about being writers themselves. A couple of good ones. These are 2 good sites. If you go out to that Kate Messner site, she is a children's book author, and she keeps a website where other authors will let her know that they're interested in doing Skype sessions with classrooms. And these are always completely free. That's all that they're. None of these authors charge. And so she keeps a list of that you can connect with any of those. You can connect with any of those authors to come into your classroom and talk with your kids. Again, had a wonderful experience with having an author come into one of my schools a few years ago during Nevada Reading Week. Brandon Moll, who wrote the Fablehaven series, was in town, and he was going out to different schools to do a live presentation with them. And for whatever reason, he got his directions mixed up and wasn't able to make it to the school that I was at. So after that fact, I emailed him the next day and said, hey, you know, we have a lot of disappointed kids. And so he agreed to do a Skype session. And so a couple of weeks later, I had all the third grade classes, actually, because there was a student in third grade who absolutely loved Brandon Moll, one of his biggest fans. And so we gathered all the third grade classes into the multi-purpose room, hooked up a computer to the big projector, big screen, and had Brandon Moll Skype in with us. And he did this whole interactive lesson where he talked to kids, and he had certain students stand up that he could see in the audience, and he would ask them questions about their writing and their brainstorming and how his process, how he went through that. And he showed us some of his drafts that he has. He showed us his little office in his home where he writes. And so again, I was able to bring in an author and make an authentic experience for those kids where they could learn what a real author does. And there's authors, again, they love doing that. They love coming into the classroom like that and sharing those kinds of experiences. But I love virtual field trips. I love speaking with authors via Skype, but one of my all-time favorite activities to do with Skype is a mystery Skype. A mystery Skype is a game that you play with another classroom someplace in the world where you ask them yes or no geography questions and try to guess the location of that classroom. I've done this for a couple of years now, and it has been one of the most fabulous activities you can do. The kids absolutely love it and are totally engaged in it. My goal this year, now that I'm back in the classroom as a fourth grade teacher, is to Skype with a class in all 50 states. And so far I'm up to about 20, in the low 20s. I've still got more than half to go. But we have Skyped with, we've done a mystery Skype with a class in Hawaii. We've done in Alaska. We've done several back east. I just did Utah, and I think it was Colorado a few weeks ago. We've done Arkansas. A few years ago, I was with a fifth grade class, and they mystery Skyped with a classroom in New Zealand. And that was a treat because of the time difference. New Zealand was actually, I think they were a whole day ahead or a whole day behind, one or the other. So that kind of blew the kids' minds that they were talking to somebody and it wasn't even the same day. So mystery Skype, many things that you can accomplish with a mystery Skype. First of all, kids learn those geography skills. They've got to know their north-south. They've got to know landmarks in the United States that they can use to ask those questions. So for example, I might ask a question like, are you east of the Mississippi? To try and narrow down which state they're in. Because remember, you can only ask yes or no questions. I might ask, do you border California? Are you one of the Four Corners states? That New Zealand class, oh, that was a fun one to try to get the kids because they had no idea about how to do hemispheres, north and southern hemispheres. So when they realized they had to guess a class someplace in the world, we had to do a quick mini lesson on hemispheres and how to find the equator and whichever the one is that goes up and down. So all sorts of geography skills that come in. The critical thinking that comes into play with something like this, they're trying to narrow down to a specific state. And so the kids really have to think, does this question going to get me where I want to go? Does it eliminate the states that I want to eliminate? Or is it a good question or a poor question? Sometimes the kids like to ask, do you border Iowa? Well, that's a hard question to answer if you actually live in Iowa. And we've talked about that. How do you answer? How does that other class going to answer if they actually live in Iowa? So what makes a good question? What makes a bad question? Again, the problem solving skills that come into that and the kids just trying to find those answers. I've done it where we've tried to guess just the state. Sometimes we've tried to guess down to the city, and sometimes even down to the school within the city, depending on how much time and how engaged the kids are. And kids are always wanting to try something like that. Everybody in the classroom has a job to do during a mystery Skype. So there's a lot of teamwork going on. Everybody contributes in some way, whether they're looking up on maps, whether they're communicating with the other class, asking the questions, but everybody is engaged in some way. So I mentioned that the job that everybody has, these are some suggested jobs that I usually use. There's others that you can have. We usually have a greeter, an individual who, when we initiate the Skype call, they will greet the other class. They will explain that I'm from Mr. Thomas's 4th grade class, and they will usually do something like a rock, paper, scissors to try and see who gets to ask the first question. Then we turn it over to our questioner and our answerer. The questioner is going to get a question from our class as a whole and ask that question to the other class. And the answerer, when the other class is asking questions to us, they're the ones that have to answer that. And the questioner and the answerer don't have to know the answers. The class can provide that for them, but they're the face on the camera. They're the ones that actually do the talking. Then I usually have Google mappers on the computer and printed atlases of the United States. And so they're the ones that are crossing off states as we eliminate possibilities so we can narrow it down to the one state that we're trying to find. A recorder is somebody, we've got to keep track of what questions we've already asked so we don't repeat ourselves. So I have a recorder. I put a huge sheet of butcher paper up on the wall, and I have somebody recording the questions and recording the answers. And I usually do that for both questions that we ask and the questions that the other class asks. Then I've also got runners who run back and forth between the different groups to make sure that everybody's got the same message, same information, because sometimes it gets kind of loud in there. They get excited about what they're finding, about what the next possible question is or a clue to ask. And so the runners just run between the recorders and the questioners and the mappers just to make sure everybody has the same information. Occasionally I've done it where I've had a group of thinkers, a set number of kids, like 3 or 4 kids, who they're the ones coming up with the questions. They take the information given to them and they're trying to come up with the question. Having a blogger and a photographer is a wonderful way of sharing this with the world, what kinds of things your class is doing at the moment. So all sorts of different jobs. Everybody in the class is involved in some way. Where do you find those classrooms to hook up with? Well, I wrote down education.skype.com, but that's an old one. If you went out to that educationmicrosoft.com site that we looked at earlier, that's one place where you can find. In fact, let me just jump out there real fast. I'm going to show you 2 places, actually, both of those that are on there. This is the Microsoft site. If I jump out to Mystery Skype, these are all teachers who are registered Skype users who would love to Skype. And if you look carefully, I don't know how easy it is for you to see, but if you look carefully in their little bio here, this Chrissy Lewin, who is in Connecticut, oh, it says the same time zone. I'm not logged in, so it doesn't know what time zone it is, but it does tell you the time zone that they're in so you can see whether they're in, how far away they are. Because that's obviously going to be a concern, whether you're going to be in school at the same time. So you can schedule those. But there's all sorts of individuals here that you can find. You can search for one specific to your grade level. Like I said, I'm trying to find one from all 50 states so I can target a certain state. I haven't done Wyoming yet, so I need to find somebody from Wyoming, and I search for a teacher there. So the Microsoft site is one good place, but my favorite place to find classes is on Twitter. If you're not a Twitter user, I highly recommend that you get yourself an account because there's a ton of education resources out on Twitter. There is a hashtag called hashtag Mystery Skype, where there's always teachers, tweeting back and forth looking for somebody. For example, a teacher here says, I have 4th graders that are learning about US regions. Would you like to mystery Skypes from Iowa? And Iowa is a state that I don't have. And I teach 4th grade, so this is a perfect, when this webinar is done, I'm going to send her a tweet and see if we can hook up sometime in March or April. 3rd grade teachers. We've even had second grade teachers. I worked with some middle school classes last year that did mystery Skype. They had a middle school geography class. So you can find all sorts of resources. I would say the majority of my connections I've made through Twitter. This tweet right here shows a third grade class, and the teacher took pictures of their activities showing how they were working there in that time. You can see them working in a small group and doing the Skype session right there, the video. So she posted pictures up there to show that. Great ways to share. So these two sites are the best ways to hook up with other classes. And I
Mark,
found a couple of mail. Go ahead.
Mark, we have a question from Mary Kirsten. How long does a mystery Skype session usually last?
Typically anywhere between 20 and 30 minutes, depending how good your class is getting and how easy it is to find the other class. I've had classes that were so into it that we went on for 45 minutes to an hour because they were really trying. It was one of those situations where they wanted to find down to the school. So they guessed the state, then they wanted to guess the city, which was a lot harder, and then they wanted to guess the school, which was a lot harder. So usually, but typically 20 to 30 minutes at the most. There's different varieties, different flavors of mystery Skype. I do because I've got a fourth grade class, I do where we guess the location of the class, but you can see that would be difficult for a kindergarten class or a first grade class to do. So I've also heard of those kinds of classes, that grade level, doing something like a mystery number. So they will get on and they will offer, the class will come up with a number in their head, a collective idea, the number 20, and then they'll ask the other kindergarten class questions to try and guess what number. It's a 2-digit number. It's number greater than 10 or something like that. I've heard of English classes in the secondary level doing like a mystery book. So they will ask questions or clues about characters or setting, trying to guess the book that the other class is thinking of. Nevada Reading Week is coming up next week. There's a Read Around the World where people will get on and they'll read your class a book virtually through Skype. So there's a variety of ways of doing it. But I really love the mystery Skype aspect where the kids have to guess and ask those questions and think critically and come up with the good questions. So, so that's everything I know about Skype. Now you know it all too. Are there any other questions about Skyping or mystery Skype in particular? I saw the question from Stephanie, what does the blogger do? If your class, it's an excellent question, if your class has maybe a class website or your class blogs, then they would like take pictures and they would kind of do a write-up to put on the class blog to kind of share, hey, this is what we did. I've had a couple of classes do that to share it out with the school and with the parents who constantly monitor that blog, and so they see pictures and they see a write-up. We blogged with such and such a class today. They were from Montana, and we were able to guess their state within 10 minutes or something like that. Just a fun way of recording what's happening and what's going on. Skype does need to have an app installed. So I don't know at your school if you have access to actually do the installation, but you do need to go out to skype.com, download the app and install it. It may take your SBT to do that for you, but it's a super easy install. Doesn't take much to do. Yeah, talking about pen pals, there's another fun global project called the Global Read Aloud. It was started by a 5th grade teacher back in Wisconsin several years ago, where classes read a common book. So there's like a certain books that you can choose from, like a elementary class might choose a certain book, and each class reads it on their own, but then they get on through Skype and they communicate and ask questions of each other, kind of quiz each other, or have a discussion about the book and the characters and what happened in the book. So that's kind of a fun, rather than doing the old-fashioned pen pal where you write letters, you get on Skype and you communicate that way. That's a fun activity to do. The Google Mappers, a couple of questions still about the jobs. The Google Mappers are actually using Google Maps on the computer to help find, to help answer the questions, find those landmarks. Um, Comes in really handy if you're guessing down to the city or the school, because then you can be looking at freeways, you can be looking at county lines, things like that.
Mark, Todd had the question. As a beginner, how understanding are people of the fact that you are a beginner at using Skype in the classroom, in your
Totally.
experience?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, and they're very understanding. Other teachers I found are very, very understanding. I've had several beginners communicate with me as well. That's their first Skype, um, or especially like the very first Skype that I did at the beginning of the year was with a class that had already done 5 or 6. So their kids obviously knew what they were doing. My kids had never done it before, and they're very understanding. It's always helpful once you make that initial connection to schedule the day and time. It's always helpful to communicate with that teacher and set up the expectations. Some classes like to start out with the rock, paper, scissors to see who goes first. Others do some other methods. Some people ask certain kinds of questions, don't allow others. But in general, they're all very helpful and yeah, very willing to help out with that.
And Igandu asks, is it mainly for geography students? How could it be used in some
No,
other content areas?
no. Yeah, you could do it with pretty much a lot of content areas. Again, I'm teaching fourth grade. I don't teach geography specifically, but it helps raise that global awareness. You could do other aspects other than the geography aspect. You could do the mystery book. I had a science teacher who hooked up with somebody who was trying to. They were doing the mystery element, so they had to ask questions to try and guess what element the class was thinking of off of the periodic table. And so there's many different ways that you could use it.
Lisa asked if she needs a static IP to Skype.
No, you do not. Good question. No, you do not need a static IP. I don't have one installed on my computer. It works beautifully. And you do have to be patient and flexible. Let me just say that, because obviously you're dealing with different time zones. Skyping with somebody in New York is a little different than Skyping with somebody in California in terms of your time management. I had a Skype. I've had several Skypes drop at the last minute because the internet connection flaked out on somebody. I had one school, we were all set to do a mystery Skype back, I think it was Kansas, and they had a tornado warning, so they had to cancel that and go to their tornado shelter. So you just have to be flexible and realize, oh, you might have to reschedule it for another time. Or there might even be some places where your schedules just don't work because of lunch or prep or beginning and ending of time of school just doesn't work out. Another activity I did a few years ago where I hooked up a librarian here at one of our schools here with somebody in Maine, and they did a mock Caldecott where they discussed different picture books that they thought should be nominated for the Caldecott Award, and then they had to hook up with the kids at the other library in Maine and have that debate about why you think this book, what's the qualities, what aspects of it do you like, and that was kind of a fun way to integrate it in the library.
Okay, we had some questions there about just some of the concerns with something along the lines of using Skype. I always make it a point whenever I'm working with students and there's information going online, I don't use their last name. I'll use a first name, maybe a first name and a last initial if you have two students that have the same first name, just to differentiate, but you don't want to get that personal with them. We had a question, do we need special permission if we're going to Skype with someone out of the country? No, there's no special permission. The major concern there is the time zones. If you're going to Skype with somebody that's in Kenya, if it's an individual, they can probably, they might be willing to work with the schedule and do a Skype that's at midnight for them. But trying to Skype with a classroom in Kenya would be present some difficulties that I don't know if you could overcome. Gayla says, I'd like to Skype with kids and their counselors in the grief group, of course, with consent for forms turned in. Yeah, I would definitely talk to administration about something along those lines, because there is the ability to record the session. I do have some concerns about that potentially. One last thing that I want to show you. Mark, do you have anything you want to add to what I just said before I show this last little bit?
Yep, I just agree wholeheartedly with everything you said.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about Skype and how we can use Skype in education for the video conferencing. But what about Google? Those of you who are Mac fans, or I should say Apple fans, you know all about FaceTime. And FaceTime could do exactly the same thing, and I'm not going to talk about it at all. Either you have an Apple or a Mac device, or you don't. Google, however, is universal. And Google does have an alternative that you can use, and that alternative is Google Hangouts. Now, Google Hangouts is a really cool tool because there's multiple features that are available in it. One of the reasons I use Google Hangouts most frequently is for chat conversations. If I have a group of people that I want to have, I guess we call it a slow chat with, which is where you can have this running conversation that I have one that's gone about 2 years now, where it's just a running conversation, and it's all in that conversation, so you can log into it whenever you want, whenever you have a question, or just on a periodic basis to check the conversation and to contribute to that. And so that's one way that I use Google Hangouts is for that chat. Sometimes you can use it for text messages as well. When I get a text message through my Google Chat, my Google Hangouts, it comes right into my text messaging. Some people just use the Hangout app for their text messaging exclusively, which is really easy to do. Google Hangouts, just like Skype, can be used for telephone calls. But for purposes of what we're doing today, Google Hangouts is ideal for video calls, and to have that conversation with somebody who's distant, have a video, so that way you can see each other and help our kids get some exposure to the world. That way they're not so isolated. That way they can have some of those experiences vicariously that they can't get it in real life. And that's the great thing about the technologies. It allows them to go out into the world and experience things that they would otherwise not be able to experience. Now with Hangouts, you can do a straight video call or video conference that's one-on-one, or actually you can have multiple people in a video conference. I think it's up to 12 or 15 different people that you can have in the video conference. So that you could have a number of different classrooms where you're all talking to each other at the same time, and that would kind of expand on the idea of the mystery Skype. I would think about it. Okay, let's say you have it's a you could call it a mystery hangout scavenger hunt, and you have maybe 4 classrooms in 4 different parts of the country that are on there at the same time, and you have to see who can guess all the other classrooms' locations first. And I think that'd be kind of cool. So it's becomes a little bit competitive. It's kind of like a scavenger hunt, and you have to see who can ask the best questions. The neat thing there is you'll hear the questions that the other groups are posting. So if you do it round robin style and everyone's asking questions, you get to hear the questions that the others are answering first before it gets to you, and so that can inform your questions as well. Hangouts does have something called Hangouts on Air, and that's done through YouTube Live, where you can use it to broadcast. I think that's a completely different feature than what we've talked about today. But if there was a need for you to want to broadcast your classroom, you could actually broadcast it out through Hangouts on Air with YouTube Live, and you can give out just the URL, so it's not searchable, but only the people with the link could access it. Just an idea, something that you might want to, again, you always want to be aware of the acceptable use policy, and make sure that you're following the acceptable use policy, and that all of your kids have media releases. But the broadcast could be used to showcase some of what your students are doing in the classroom. You can do it very anonymously, where you're posting it onto YouTube. I'm going to switch gears here now and talk about doing a mystery hangout. So if I just do a Google search, in fact, I'll just go back here, and I'll just type in mystery hangout, and it takes me to a Google Plus community. Now, with our district Google accounts, we all have a Google Plus identity. So if I go to click on that, I'm logged in. You can see my happy smiling face here. It shows me I'm logged into my account, and I'm in the Google Plus community, and this is one for Mystery Hangouts, and it's for schools. Now, to join this community, it's really easy. All I have to do is click on this green button that says join, and it tells me that I'm a member. Oh, I don't want to leave it. Okay, so I'm part of this community. Now, in this Google Plus community, I can look for Mystery Hangouts, and I see a number of people that are talking about how to Mystery Hangout. They're looking for some more information. We see here that Karen is looking for a to do a Mystery Hangout anywhere in the U.S. with another class. She's in grades 2 through 4. She's a 3rd grade class looking for a 2nd through 4th grade class, and she gives the time slot there, 2:10 to 2:40 Eastern Standard Time. And that's the neat thing about this. You can just go onto this community and look for somebody who is another class who's looking to do a Mystery Hangout at your grade level, because you obviously want it to be at your grade level. And there's a lot of information here that's available for people to access, and gives you access to those people. And so you can see all the posts. You can on the left hand side here, you can look at the teachers and some of the topics that are available to look at. Notice that this is something that's worldwide, and so that's really cool. So it works just like that Skype page did, but in this case it is a Google Plus, which is Google's social media app. It is a Google Plus community. Okay, now I'd like to demonstrate how to do a Hangout. I'm not going to do it with the classroom or with the school. I'm going to just hang out with one of our other coordinators here in the Curriculum and Professional Development Division, Jody Myers, just to demonstrate how that works. Okay, so to access the Google Hangouts, I just open up a new page and I just type in Google Hangouts, and it'll take me to the first web page that it brings up as a result is the page to go to. Now notice again, I am logged in here. If you're not logged in, make sure that you do that before you do anything. And so it gives me a couple of options here. Right here you see my technology slow chat that I'm still a part of, but then you have the option to look at your contacts, to have a phone conversation, or right here is what you want to click on, the video call. So you're going to start a video call, and it's going to open up in a new tab, and notice this is called Google Meet. I still think of it as Google Hangouts. I know that they have the Meet app, which is part of Hangouts, and it's all connected, but I still think of it as being Hangouts. Now you have two choices. You can start a new meeting or use a meeting code. I'm going to start a new meeting. It's joining and it's loading, and it says that it's ready. Okay. It gives me a URL here, a link that I can use to send out. I'm going to go ahead and start the meeting. And you can see my smiling face there on the camera. We're going to copy this join information, and then I'm going to actually turn off my camera for right now because you don't need to see my live face for right now. That's one of the things with my webinars. That camera was way too close for me for right now, but in a classroom setting it's going to be a lot better. And so I might turn it back on just in a second when I get Jody on. Okay, so I have that link. Now I'm going to just create an email, and I've already talked to Jody about it. So I'm going to say Google Hangout link and just send that link to her. All right, and click send. Okay, so I'm back on the page now in my Hangout, and you can see that I'm here, and I'm waiting for Jody to join us, and so she can join us anytime now. Obviously, with doing this with another classroom, I would have it prearranged so that way they were coming in at the right time. Okay, and there's Jody.
Hello.
How are you doing, Jody?
I am well.
All she had to do was click on the link that I sent her, and it brought her right in. Jody, anything you want to add about joining the Hangout as on the receiving side?
Easy. It was super easy. I got an email. The link to the event was in the email. I clicked on the link, opened it up, clicked join the meeting, and here I am.
All right, awesome. So you can see how easy this would be to do this between classrooms. Thank you very much, Jody.
You're welcome.
We'll talk to you later.
Bye-bye.
And then to hang up, as you saw, I just clicked the red button that says hang up, and I'm out of the meeting. I can actually rejoin that video call. For some reason, there's an internet problem, you got kicked out, and you can just rejoin that same call very, very easily. Or you can go back to your home screen and start another call. So that's how easy it is to use a Google Hangout. And it says that nothing's scheduled here. Something to be aware of in the settings. You want to go through before you do your meeting. You want to make sure that your camera is working, and you can see my camera is working right there. You want to test your microphone to make sure that it's working, and I'm using my Samsung Meteor mic, but that's the one that's working by default. And you want to test your speakers, and they're obviously working there. Okay, so you want to make sure that you do test those things prior to starting your Google Hangout. And network, that should be automatic, nothing that I've ever had to mess with there. Okay, so I'm done with that, and it's really, really super easy. So just have to find somebody. The hard part is finding somebody and scheduling your Google Hangout. Okay, I hope that was useful for you. I do want to draw your attention to the district's CCF 588, the annual release and network access form that parents fill out for the students to have computer access. And section 2 here is the media and public release, which lets parents know that sometimes the district does seek to release additional personally and identifiable student information beyond directory information in either a print or electronic format. And it's used in internal or external media sources that may be released to the public. And it tells you that it might include the student's electronic digital photograph, a description of school activities or achievements, and or audio, video, film reproduction of your student. So that is out there. The parents sign off on this. Notice that there's the section here about giving or not giving permission to release the information described above, which in this case is the video of the student. And so they give access to it, or they choose to not give access. As well with the computer network access, notice that one of the things that for which permission is given is for video conferencing. So it is covered there on the media release, and that's really important for us to know and be aware of. It's super, super, super important that you know which of your students have this filled out, and if you don't know, I don't know how to access the information on Infinite Campus, but I know that your office manager or your registrar in your school does, and so you can get your students and make sure that the students have the media release in place prior to putting them on camera, I should say, in a Google Hangout or in a mystery Skype. We just have to be very, very careful and protect our students. Again, I never ever use students' last names, nothing more than the student's first name. Possibly the initial, nothing, just because I like to play it safe, and so I think that's really important to protect our students in this manner. If your students do not have this filled out, or if their parents have not given that permission, they may not be on camera. Put them off to the side of the classroom, have them operating a camera, possibly doing something other than having their image in the presentation. Throw that out there. Important reminder, it's not hard to get that information to find out who has the release and who doesn't. I would like to take just a moment to thank you for attending this webinar and for taking your time to learn how you can incorporate Skype or Google Hangouts, how you can incorporate video conferencing into your instructional practices. I'd like to give a special shout out to Mark Thomas over at Hurd Elementary School for his work with Skype over the last few years. I've seen him do some amazing things with Skype and with classrooms and with students, and it's been a powerful thing, and it's really been something that the students love. They really enjoy it, and I think that he's a great resource, and I know that he would not mind me telling you to go and reach out to him if there's anything that he can do to help you As well, if there's anything I can do to provide support for you, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. You can find both of us through the district's Google email. Finally, as we wrap up, let me remind you to take the evaluation survey at the very end of this webinar in just a second. It'll pop up in the Edpuzzle as a question. Take that survey. After you complete the survey, mark that question as done, and then go back into the Google Classroom and mark the assignment as done in the Google Classroom as well. Okay? Thank you again for your time and your attention, and I hope that you have a wonderful rest of your day.